Hello and welcome. My name is Jevgenij Rusakov and you're watching TVP World interview from Vilnius. Tensions in the Middle East have escalated sharply in recent weeks, with Iran playing an increasingly active role in regional developments and raising concerns about wider geopolitical consequences. To discuss what is happening, how regional and global powers are reacting, and what this escalation could mean for the future of the region, we are joined by Šarūnas Liekis, political scientist from Vytautas Magnus University. Šarūnas, glad to see you in our studio. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you for inviting.
What's your overall assessment on what has been happening in Iran since February 28th?
I think we should start from overall picture in the world. I mean, describing, what kind of developments we're witnessing in the last years. And we are seeing, move of the world into the direction of multipolarity. And actually, this multipolarity has its own characteristics in every of the regions. So in the Middle East, despite the US dominance for many, many years, Iran retained a lot of its power. And also it was growing. Despite sanctions, despite difficulties, Iran was growing as a military power, as well as economic power. By all parameters, Iran is basically a growing power. And despite all the limits that are put on Iran. The US strategy for a long time, from 2007, together with the Israelis, was basically very well described by General Clark, who was speaking about, the attempts by US and Israel basically to eliminate all the possible competitors in the region. So we're basically talking about the war of conquest on one part, which is justified by all kinds of reasons, usually. And naturally, we understand that this is a kind of grave violation of international law. So what we're witnessing right now. So what we see a war between US, Israel, and Iran, where gradually all the surrounding countries are getting involved. And this is a very dangerous development, because then it can spiral out and might become completely unpredictable and uncontrollable. So in a sense, the escalation becomes uncontrollable as a result, and this is what we are witnessing right now. Though there are some small attempts by US, in the background somewhere, to contain the conflict. However, regionally, we see, and all of us, we are witnessing right now the attempts basically by the Iranians to expand the conflict as much as possible, not to face Americans and Israelis alone.
Okay, since you've mentioned all those neighboring regional powers, how would you assess their reaction to this escalation of conflict?
All the countries have very restrained reaction to the situation, because they feel the victims of the situation as well. Because they were not warned in advance. Nobody was warned. The allies, NATO allies of US were not warned. Nobody knew that the war should start. And they feel betrayed. And
betrayed by whom?
By US. They feel betrayed by US. The simple reason, because they were exposed to danger, while United States did not take care to provide adequate defense, especially air defense, against the Iranian threats. I would like to mention that, the business relationship, trade relationship, human, movement of humans, across the region were very intensive, before the war. So all these countries in the Persian Gulf, they have extensive relationships with Iran. At the same time, there is a presence of US military bases, sovereign territories in all the Gulf countries. The other countries feel that they are exposed. So exposed, and they have to participate actually indirectly in the military action, as well as to be exposed to the dangers and even casualties, casual casualties, I would say, casual casualties, and to suffer the drop in popularity, perceptions, perceptions of the safe haven for investment. For example, most of the countries like Qatar or United Arab Emirates. So they were presenting themselves all the time, and their growth was based on the idea that they are safe haven. Suddenly the safe haven collapses because the irresponsible allies even did not manage to inform them, that they are going into the war against a major power in the Middle East, Iran, which is, it's a big country, 93 million. Everybody forgets about it. So one of the larger countries, and geographically with large territory, comparable to all Western Europe together, and very difficult landscape for direct military action. And the Allies, Americans and Israelis, engaged in decapitating attacks on the leadership of Iran and basically started the war. The idea of the war was that there should be regime change war. So regime change, it means to make Iran friendly to the US interest.
You've also mentioned this Iran's strategy involving almost all of its neighbors. So how would you assess this one?
This strategy might be beneficial on one side. On the other hand, it's dangerous because it spirals out not only for US and Israel and for the larger world. Right now we're witnessing the prices of oil going up. And basically, this is enormous inflationary blow to all economy across the world, and it will feel in, for example, in Lithuania, in Poland, elsewhere, very soon. And actually, this is what makes, in real terms, the politicians to be concerned, because their popularity also depends on the well-being of the citizens, for example, in Europe. And though at the very beginning they were kind of, in a sense, a little bit scared and were trying to please Trump's administration, majority, apart from Spanish, Slovenians, Croats, few countries which were basically openly said no to this adventurism, military type of adventurism. So they said no. But right now, I think everybody will have to cope with the consequences.
Iran's officials often accuse the US and Israel of trying to encourage unrest amongst Iran's Kurdish population. So how realistic do you think such scenarios, could be?
The fact that the attempts were made, a few days ago, there was the wave of news, all kinds of messages coming through different social platforms, X, Facebook, etc., predicting that this is the plan. This is a part of the plan, to recruit the Kurdish militias from, especially, I imagine Syria should be, Iraq, and to throw them as a foot soldiers against Iranians. This was an option, but it didn't work because when you look at the fate of the US allies, the different Kurdish political groupings in Syria, so they were left with nothing. They were sold basically to the Turkish interest, when we're speaking in Afrin, for example, in the area from 2019. So in the Kurdish political movements, different Kurdish tribes, at large, they feel betrayed by US. In the past.
Again, Kurdish.
Against Kurdish. And they think, why should we be proxy as a foot soldiers for US interests? And at the same time, US is not speaking about the ground operation of their own. So they understand that for the most dirty, the most bloody work, they're looking for the tribal allies who are easy because of corruption, etc. The leadership is easier to buy. And majority, and also the problem with the Kurds that it's not Kurdish-Arab, Kurdish-Turkish relations. Iranians and the Kurds are the same, basically linguistically the same group. They're much closer. Then religiously, very little difference. For example, between the Persians and Kurds in Iran. So all the Shiites. And though there are, like we know in Syria, etc., Yazidis, Christians, etc., different groups, but there is no traditional animosity between the Iranians and the Kurds.
Okay, let's move from regional to global. So, could the current escalation be beneficial for Russia in geopolitical terms? And if so, why? And how?
In terms of economy, in terms of diversification of its efforts, and in terms of, let's say, breaking through the barriers created by the sanctions policies, the situation is beneficial to Russia. However, if to look from the larger perspective, the Russians, as the Chinese as well, I mean, we have to take into account China.
That's my next question.
Okay, let's stay with Russia right now. So for Russia, they well understand that this is Iranian question is also the question of Eurasian coherence, and the whole question, for example, their projects to push out Americans from Europe, and on these slogans, actually, they started the war against Ukraine, that basically, we should get rid of Americans from the European continent. I mean, if they, for example, allow, and in their view, from their viewpoint, if Americans suddenly take over Iran, for them it's no less dangerous situation than, expansion of American influence in Ukraine eventually, or for example, losing the Ukrainian war. I think this is a danger of this similar caliber, because then the question of South Caucasus comes to the forefront.
Sure.
Then all the straits, Turkish straits, Black Sea, etc., etc. So there are all kinds of strategic issues that should be concern for Russia, and Russia doesn't seem to tolerate it, even if they explicitly don't say this or that. But we don't know what they do. I mean, we don't know what they do and what they are preparing for. So this is an issue, and all these popular speculations about that. Look, I mean, they are shocked. They are not. This is. I mean, we should take it very, in a sense, with big caution.
Okay. Now, briefly, China.
China the same. For the Chinese, eventually they understand that, as for the Russians, if Iran is falling down, this is a question of the resources from the Middle East, the economy highly dependent on oil and gas from Middle East. Also the trade routes, all these new Silk roads, etc., etc. Iran is of crucial importance in all this.
It is.
In all these designs. So the same is as with the Russians. My prediction that the Chinese are staying for a while very quiet, but waiting for the right moment.
Having a look.
Having a look and waiting for the right moment.
So what consequences could all this have for the Middle East and for the broader international system?
There was in Foreign Affairs in Journal a few months ago, there was an excellent article by Stefan Wald, and he was speaking about how the nature of international relations is changing and how the role of United States is changing in the whole system. So he was speaking about predator hegemon. The hegemon, which is basically is not benevolent anymore. So we used to see the hegemon who is benevolent. In a sense, he allows everybody to, to participate in the system. Everybody makes benefits from the system. Right now, we are witnessing the transformation of U.S. role because it's a weakening hegemon, so it becomes predatory. And what does it mean for the allies? That this kind of predatory hegemon is playing the role of, basically, he seeks zero-sum game. So even if you're ally, you will be, exploited to the same extent, and to the same extent as the enemy. So it's a dangerous situation for everybody on the board because the situation is being transformed, and we don't know, who will benefit more, the allies or the enemies.
Thank you for joining us today, and I really hope to see you once again in our studio.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest for today was Šarūnas Liekis, political scientist at Vytautas Magnus University. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.